Hi guys, Manny the Tidy Sticky Mama here, and today we're going to be talking about a kid's clothes stash and how to keep it organized. Like many parents, I keep a stash of kids' clothes made from hand-me-downs and things bought ahead on sale for them to grow into. It's a great budget stretching measure, and it helps keep you ahead of those growth spurts, which always happen at the least convenient time. Right? But especially if you are doing it for multiple kids, keeping it organized is an absolute must. The first step is deciding what you want to keep in your stash. If you're a one and done family, your stash is probably just shopping ahead because there's no reason to keep stuff your kid has outgrown. If you've got multiple kids of varying ages, you likely have some hand-me-downs too. But how do you decide what to stash? It's all a question of money, space, and time. Financially, how well can you afford to replace clothes between kids? Is it a budgetary necessity to reuse clothes you already own and shop ahead with sales rather than potentially getting caught paying full price for your child's next growth spurt? How much space do you want to dedicate to your stash? If there's not much, you'll need to be much more strict about your guidelines and maybe only keep the next size up for each child. And how long do you want to hold on to things before they get worn? If you have 5 years between kids, is it worth your oldest clothes sitting around for 5+ years before the next one fits into them? Once you decide what your stash values are, what and how much to keep becomes pretty clear. On my end, I value my personal style, my space, and my budget, so those frame my decisions. I only keep the pieces I really like between kids, the ones that I would definitely buy again if I saw it for sale, so my long-term stash is pretty minimal. I limit shopping ahead to the next size up for each kid and purge a size as soon as it's been outgrown so that nothing extra is taking up room. And I use the stash to stretch our budget. I build from hand-me-downs with shopping ahead to make best use of retail sales and shopping secondhand, which saves me big time versus buying an entire new wardrobe on the spot for each kid. But more on that in another video. Now, those strategies for me have evolved over time. With my first, I kept everything that was not completely trashed or worn out. And it was kind of a lot. It really was. But then, my second, despite being the same sex, was born in an entirely different season, and a lot of that stash was pretty useless. So, after that, and discovering KonMari, my perspective shifted, and I started keeping a lot less. Between my second and my third, who was a boy after 2 girls, I started the practice of going back through my stash periodically because it's easier for me to get rid of things the longer it's been since my kid has worn them. Like the difference between it having been on their sweet, chubby little baby self a couple of months ago and it being in a box for 6 months pulls some of the sentimentality out of it and lets me review it just as a piece of clothing rather than the outfit she was wearing when she crawled for the first time. You know what I mean? Plus, faced with a different sex of baby and knowing that their dad wouldn't want me to put him in sweet little ruffly rompers like his sisters had been, I had to face the question of how long I was actually willing to hold on to things if it wasn't going to be worn for, maybe a whole nother 3 or 4 years because this baby wouldn't be using it. So I ended up only keeping the things I really, really loved that I would absolutely save for that 4th baby, regardless of if this baby used them or not. There are also some things I just plain do not keep between kids, regardless of how much joy they spark. Swimsuits, for example, with all the chlorine and the heat and all of that, the elastic just falls apart in storage, so it's not worth holding on to whatsoever. Socks, it seems like my kids always end up with a dirty little footprint on the bottom of theirs over time. I don't know what it is, But so I don't keep any of those either, except in the infant sizes where, they're not getting walked on. And baby socks are kind of ridiculously expensive for how tiny they are. So yeah, I stash those for the baby sizes, but not anything bigger than like 24 months. And I don't stash underwear unless it's never been worn. And it's not an ick factor on that because, it gets washed, right? But it's another elastic problem. It just wears out really fast in underpants. So, just buy new ones. I also try really hard to not keep anything that's like very basic, like just a plain pair of gray sweatpants or a white sweater that you'll be able to find the next time Easter comes around. I try to only keep things that I might never see again, and I really, really love it. So the more easily replaceable something is, the more likely I am to just let it go. In a nutshell, I keep very few things between kids. Generally, it averages 3 to 5 pieces of any given category, like 3 long sleeve tops, 4 pants, 3 shorts, that sort of thing, for each size. I only shop one size ahead for any kid, either filling in hand-me-down gaps or starting fresh for my oldest, and I periodically review the stash of outgrown clothes just to make sure I really am only keeping the things that I really, really want to spend the space on. Anyway, keeping it organized. Early on, I switched from empty diaper boxes to these clear bins. I picked the 56 quart size because initially I had a really big stash of clothes from my firstborn, and I wanted to try to keep it to 1 bin per size of clothing. And these have so far afforded me plenty of room to do so. And it's worked all the way up to size 8 so far. We'll see how it works out as the clothes get bigger and take up more room, but so far so good. Now, the clear bin in particular is great because I can tell at a glance which size is in which bin, because I have a pretty good memory for what clothes I have gotten in what size, or what clothes they wore when they were whatever age. But even so, I keep the ends labeled with what size is in the box, in case somebody else is grabbing a bin for me, or in the event I do have multiple sizes in the same bin, like my baby stash. I think my baby stash is like newborn to 6 month in one box, and then like 9 to 12 in another, something like that. I also keep a few things separated by category rather than by size, like coats and jackets, for example, because those in particular are relatively bulky and take up more space than they really need to in the size bin. Plus, it's not like I have 15 coats in the size 5, so keeping, a couple jackets of each size all together in a bin just makes more sense to me. Everything is kept on this shelf right here. I actually built this thing, and it was a lot of fun. I made a video about it. But that's one advantage to using a uniform bin, is that you can customize your storage space, given the space to do so. When we've lived in other homes that I haven't had the space to do something like this, I have kept either everything just stacked in the sides of the kids' closet, or I kept their current and next size in their closet, and then the rest of it out in the garage. Now, if you're really short on space, something that I really like, and I have one in my room, actually. I haven't gotten them for the kids yet, but those raised bed frames where there's 14 inches of clearance underneath, these bins, the 56 quart Sterilite bins, will just slide right under, and you can fit 4 underneath a twin bed, just end to end, because you get 2 and then there's a leg, and then you can put 2 more. So that's a pretty good storage solution if you're short on closet space, or really any space. Or if you just want to maximize what you have. The kids will never even know they're there. Currently, the way I have my shelf set up is their current sizes are up here right at easy access level. So if I need to grab something real quick, I can just pop in the bin. Or if they outgrow something a little early, I can just open it, pop it in there too. Things that are in waiting are down on the shelf below. kind of have it organized in the most likely to be needed closer to this shelf, but I just swapped the wardrobes over, as you've seen in the rest of this video, so it's a little jumbly right now. But in general, even all jumbly, because I have clear bins and because I label the ends, I know where to find what I need when I need it. Now, this is the part that some people are going to say is a little extra, but trust me, it's important. Keeping track of what you have is equally important to keeping it physically organized. I have two methods I've used for that, either a localized inventory or a centralized inventory. Either way is great, it just really depends on your personal preferences. A localized inventory is keeping the list of contents with each bin, like a piece of paper slipped in the side or an index card tossed on the top, for example. A centralized inventory is having all of your inventories in one spot, in a home binder if you use one, or maybe in your planner or saved in your phone. I actually kind of still use both. With the bin full of jackets and the bin of school uniforms, I use a localized inventory because for those it just makes more sense to me to do that. But in general, I prefer a centralized inventory in my planner because I always have my planner with me. So it helps me see what each kid has and needs all in one place when grandmas ask or I'm out shopping. Just as importantly, it tells me what they don't need, so I don't end up with 13 t-shirts and no pants, or 3 Christmas outfits but no winter coat. I've made one recent adjustment to my stash strategy, and that is that I am no longer keeping anything past a size 4 once it has been outgrown. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but for me, it doesn't make much sense to hold on to every single size of clothing that my kids have outgrown. It's just, it's going to take up more and more space as time goes on, and I don't want to have a stash of, teenager clothes. At the same time, I'm still keeping a stash of newborn clothes, because can you imagine all those boxes, right? As the clothes get bigger, they take up more space, and I'd rather have the room. Second, by the time they fit in size 5, if not before, kids have distinct and definite opinions about what they wear and the clothes that they would actually like to have. So I like to include them in the clothing selection process at that point. So it doesn't make sense for me to necessarily have this big tote of hand-me-downs sitting around for 3 years when the kid isn't even going to want to put it on. So better to just let it go. So what's your strategy for kids' clothes? Leave your best tip for keeping a good stash down in the comments below, and hit that subscribe button for me if you haven't already. I've got more great stuff coming, and you don't want to miss any of it. Bye guys! See you next time.